there's probably going to be a lot of that kind of like 10x language for content marketers, people who are like disproportionately above the rest of content marketing.
Hey folks, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Content Briefly. Today we're talking to Sam Balter, who runs content marketing at Wistia. Wistia has a long-time reputation for having a great brand, and we talk quite a bit about how content fits into that. Sam also has a really interesting perspective on how all companies could be doing more with video. He had some great ideas, I thought. We talk about how video has changed a lot over the past couple of years between kind of the rise of the creator economy, everyone going remote because of COVID, and a few other factors which have made video really more accessible and actually easier to make with lower expectations on production value. So Sam, as you might expect, feels that there's a huge opportunity with video for a lot of companies, and I tend to agree with him. I really enjoyed this conversation. As always, I hope you do too. And also, just in full disclosure, I am both a Wistia shareholder and a customer, so there's probably some bias in that, but I am both of those things because I really believe in what they do and in their product. So with all that said, I'll get out of the way. Enjoy this episode. Hey everybody, Jimmy from Superpath here with another episode of Content Briefly. I have a new friend, Sam Balter, head of content at Wistia, here today. We were just reminiscing, or I was reminiscing, I guess, about Wistia content, which for me goes back 7 to 8 years working on Wistia on the agency side, actually. Maybe we'll get into some of that. But first, Sam, would you mind introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, your role at Wistia, and maybe some of the other projects you have going on.
Yeah. My name is Sam Balter. I'm the head of content here at Wistia. Before this, I worked at ZoomInfo, where I was the director of media content. And before that, I worked at HubSpot for a few years as well.
Very cool. Paint the full picture of Wistia. What's the product? Give us a sense of the company and who your customers are.
Yeah. So Wistia started back in 2006. So that's like 17 years ago or so.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And when Wistia started, it was primarily like a video embedding tool. So basically, you want to embed a video on your website and you want it to have a nice player and you want it to look nice. And that would be where you would use Wistia. Today, Wistia is like a very different company and represents kind of an all-in-one video platform. So people can host their videos, create videos, distribute them, do webinars, do text-based editing, cut things into clips. So it's really solving for a lot of B2B buyers and a lot of other people in B2C as well, of just having a central spot to manage all of your video content. So you can look at it, you can clip it, you can compare it, you can take notes on it, all from a single area. So that's kind of how the company has evolved today, letting you create, analyze, host, and distribute your videos.
Nice. And customers, are they primarily other B2B SaaS companies, or do you find that it's really just anybody who needs kind of video features beyond what, say, YouTube offers?
Yeah. So Wistia's got around, I'd say like about 20,000 paying customers today.
Oh, wow.
And we have a little over 420,000 users. So I think you see a lot of customers in the kind of paid space who are using Wistia that are like software companies. A lot of people, there's a good amount of people within industrial manufacturing who want to create videos that showcase their product and showcase like how it's used. And then we have some large customers in the kind of the education space where it's like they want to host like a large number of educational videos and things like that, courses, information, like along those lines. So those are probably your core kind of customers that we're often going after. But a lot of the times it's like you're a restaurant and you want to put a video of your food on your website and you want the player to look nice, you might use Wistia as well.
Yeah. It's a really nice product. We use it for a few different purposes. One is gating video content.
Yes.
Which is incredibly useful. You give someone 30 seconds of kind of quote unquote free access, then you can prompt them to enter an email to watch the rest of it. It's great. So like if we do a webinar, we'll often publish on Wistia, embed it on the site, and then gate it so that other people have to register in order to see it later. It's just like such a great use case for it.
It's such an easy win that like a lot of businesses don't take advantage of. Like we allow you to do forms, so you're gating it, but also things like if you're doing a webinar on a research report, you can point the video there and then create a button so that somebody could download the research report from the video. Like there's a lot of cool CTAs, annotations, things like that you could do to make the videos more interactive, which I think is hugely helpful. But yeah, it's a very, very easy piece of software to use.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. Actually, I just thought of this. The microphone that I am talking into right now is a gift from Wistia. Because
Oh,
last
nice.
year, I guess it was last year, as Wistia was developing its webinar product, they needed some customers to test it out, which
Yeah.
I did. So we ran some webinars on Wistia. Anyways, they sent me this very nice gift.
Yeah, Wistia Live is great. We've really been putting a lot into making that experience good. And the updates that are coming around Wistia Live are like very fantastic if you do webinars.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk about content specifically.
Yep.
Wistia has been doing content for a very long time. I would also point out that Chris Savage the founder or co-founder, I suppose, and CEO of Wistia, has been doing content for a very long time as well. Some of it on Wistia, some of it on personal sites. I am curious how that potentially influences what the culture around content is like at Wistia, but also just curious about like nuts and bolts, like who's on your team. Can you give us, even if it's just in broad strokes, like an overview of what content strategy looks like at Wistia too?
Yeah, so I'll start at kind of like just the content team vibe here and the content team like creation process, which is great. Like Wistia is really unprecedented, at least for the like places I've worked, in terms of having huge amounts of autonomy to take creative risk for the content. And I think a lot of that is actually built up around some of the big early successes that Wistia had around brand content. Like one of the ones that a lot of people know Wistia for is 110-100,
Yeah.
where it was this big brand series they did where they gave an agency basically, $110,000 or $111,000 and said, make us a $1,000 ad for this product soapbox, make us a $10,000 ad for this product, and then make us a $100,000 ad and let's document the whole thing. And it was to talk about the difference between, creativity and money and how those things influence each other and kind of the net product you're creating. So like Wistia is very strong on this very big, bold brand content, which I think gives like the content creators a lot of leeway to take risks, to try things, to do stuff that we think is going to cut through and get to the audience. So that's sort of like one bucket of content, very strong brand affinity content. The next area of content that's like a very strong historical suit of content for Wistia is production content. Like our team here, since we make videos, since we have software related to videos, we have like incredibly good video experts, and we leverage that to create very, very tactical things on how to shoot with your iPhone, how to do a lighting setup for under $100, recommended video, cameras, recommended things for webinar software, how to use different pieces of different things together, right? So we do a lot of that, like production, how to shoot better stuff, how to record better videos, and that's also a huge chunk of Wistia's content today.
I feel like that's like probably a perfect intersection of massive demand from search queries and, perfectly positioned content for Wistia to actually convert people. Like that Venn diagram doesn't always overlap so nicely.
No, and I mean to a certain degree, it's like it's definitely our best search category. Like it is our search category we dominate on is hugely production oriented content, which is awesome. I think it does a good job of also building brand affinity with the person holding the camera. Like, or the person who's attempting to hold the camera for the first time and is like, they want to make a good video. They don't have a huge budget. They're trying to do something in their house. They're trying to make some great content. And so I think we speak really, really well to that audience and have a very strong affinity with that audience because of the way we've written that content. That being said, like it's a lot of the people who are more involved in video now because is the average marketing manager. And now there's also customer support using video, sales using video. It's not just like the person actually recording and producing the content who's in charge of the video strategy, but we've noticed that a lot more people are involved in video. And I think it's an area we want to invest in terms of content, is like creating more content for that marketing manager who's struggling to do video analytics, that person who's trying to connect HubSpot and Wistia so that when somebody watches a video or fills out a form on a video, they do good email or marketing automation kind of follow up on that. So I think it's like the production content's really strong for us. It's built like a really good thing. And I think there's other kind of additional content in an area of like video strategy that we're building out more content on.
Nice. We're recording this, let's see, early April 2024, basically 4 years since the pandemic started. How did that affect the way that you think about marketing a video product like this? And what I'm getting at is, okay, everybody's remote all of a sudden. Does that mean that lower production value videos are kind of overnight more attractive, like it's more accessible to people? There's a lower expectation. Or like for companies that maybe did have studios or sent people out on shoots, like I imagine all that change. Maybe I'm totally overthinking this, but I'm just imagining like video is just different than it was 4 years ago.
Yes, video is really different than it is 4 years ago. So I'll say like there's a bunch of things to unpack within that related to video. So I think one, you have an issue where like you lost the ability for a lot of businesses to do events. So it forced more businesses to move to online events, to do video events, and having an engaging video event and having an engaging like physical event are two very different things. You have to think about them differently. You have to produce differently. And I think a lot of people learned a ton of valuable lessons about like how to produce a good kind of webinar, good video event throughout the pandemic. So it's like, I think a lot of businesses found it useful first because they needed to replace a physical event. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is you start at a broad trend. Everybody was sitting inside and video consumption of everything rose. TikTok rose. Like you have huge amounts of video consumption growing on YouTube. You have like all of that going up pretty significantly throughout the pandemic and then continuing afterwards. And so your kind of question about this is like, not only did it change the process for people, what they were creating? Yeah, it changed, like they wanted to move some inverse and stuff to digital. Great. I think you also had a lot of people who were needing to communicate with people and not being able to do that in person. Sales, customer support. All of a sudden, these teams are not necessarily, they're needing to like get information out there. They might not be meeting directly with clients. So they might be sending more video follow-up and things like that. So you see people testing the waters a lot more during that time period of like using video within their workflow. Whereas video is really traditionally held within the marketing department, you start seeing trickle into other departments more. And then I think the kind of last part of your question that was about how has video changed or customer expectations about video changed? That's super significant and something we've actually conducted a good amount of research on from our most recent State of Video report. One of the things that we noticed in terms of engagement, like the engagement rate, how long does somebody watch a video relative to how long it is? Like, are they going to watch 5 minute, 10 minute? How much of a video are they going to watch? The highest engagement rate content, when we looked at different types of content, so like promotional videos, customer testimonials, how-to videos, was instructional content.
That's super interesting. It's cool.
Yeah, it's super interesting to see. And it was like our winner was 3 to 5 minute instructional content was like the best performing. And I was like, oh, wow, that's like pretty interesting. And then the other side of it was we had research from TikTok, and TikTok showed that there was a huge boost in likability, ad recall, all of this other stuff when you show a product in use versus a promotional video, right? So instead of saying like, my product does this, you create some sort of like just showing the product doing it. So like an example for me, and I think this is kind of the way I think about a lot of video stuff today. I saw an ad once that was like, this wallet can't be sawed in half. It can't be sawed in half. And it was like,
I got that
like
ad
trying to saw
recently.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, but it shows the wallet, somebody trying to saw it, blah, blah, blah. It's like ridiculous. But it switched my mindset pretty significantly because normally the way, especially a lot of B2B businesses is go, tell me about the problem. Then the product comes in and it's the hero that solves the problem. And my wallet has never been sawed in half. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
this is not a problem I've literally ever run into or even been close to running into. I've never like, oh my God, yeah, I guess that almost happened to me when I was near that saw. Like never happened. But I'm on their website. I'm looking at this wallet. I'm about to buy this stupid thing. I did it, but I was very close to buying this ridiculous wallet because it was like, it's engaging. I saw it in use. It didn't feel the same way. It was a very big switch from the normal way of showing products. And so like, I always think that's like a funny example of like a kind of extreme one. But in my last job at Zoom Info, we had a video. It was one of the best. It was one of the top performing videos on social. It was like, I think 3 to 5 minutes long, and it had the absolutely riveting title of How to Remove CRM Duplicates in Salesforce. And it was like 10,000 plus, it was like views on this video that's on a really boring topic that's just like, here's what you do. You click here, you do this, you click here, you do this, you do this. And then it's like, that's how you remove the duplicates using like Wrigley, right? And so like, it's really changed my perspective a lot of saying like, there's a huge value to these videos that are just simple instructional videos that show it, because they actually match a lot of the content that you see on like TikTok and other areas. And they're a big switch from the way that businesses normally talk about their products, which is kind of long-winded. And you're talking about a problem that is sometimes so broad that people just go past it. Can't get enough leads? Like, is that your problem? That's going to be 8,000 other companies are going to solve that same problem.
Right.
So I think like having that unique, I'm just going to show you how to do it is a big change that happened from the pandemic. Is like all of those things coalesce together to make sort of a culture shift on what people want to see in videos, and that they're willing to just watch something that's lower production, and they're going to be more engaged when you can see something in use, accomplish the task, and then go, I also have that same problem.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I feel like what you're describing is almost like a spectrum of video styles that a company could do. Like I suspect that a lot of companies don't do video because, or maybe they have like some basic sort of like very like functional tutorial style stuff, which might be like one end of the spectrum. Whereas the other end of the spectrum is like highly creative stuff. Like I'm thinking of an example where many years ago, Zendesk created a video of a group of employees in a alt rock band. And the idea was when people searched for Zendesk alternatives, they would find this band called Zendesk Alternative. And it was just like a video of like this band playing. It was like really funny, it was like really well done. But not every company I think has like the maybe the guts or the creative willpower to make those kind of things happen. But it doesn't mean that some type of video doesn't belong in your content strategy somewhere.
Yeah, like I think about a lot about Airbnb. So like Airbnb used to make these videos that would be like a movie, like a cinematic movie. And it would be like, you're going and then it's like the person on the plane and then they like show up and all this other stuff. And it's like really, really great. They were fantastic, wonderful brand videos. If you look at what like Brian Chesky shares on videos today, they're like GIFs of the app. They're like,
yeah,
now you can see total price.
Right. Thank God, finally.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You look at it and you go, oh shit, that's cool. Like, actually, that makes me want to go back to Airbnb more. And so, I think for a lot of businesses, what they could probably benefit from is you probably have crummy videos that are explaining the product that are done by somebody internally. And then you have a whole team that's like, let's make these really zesty, cool, interesting videos. If you just like apply a little bit of that zesty coolness to the slightly more boring tutorial videos, that will probably be a lot more engaging and you'll have like an evergreen asset that you can use.
Yeah, totally. We actually do a lot of tutorial videos with our partners. So like they have a product they want to showcase and we help them create tutorial videos. And I think they're great. We chop them up into, I'm actually really glad to know 3 to 5 minutes is a good length because that's pretty much the exact length we chop them down to. But I just have a video editor come in, add music, bumpers, clean it up, remove all the awkward parts. And the final product is so much better than the kind of raw Riverside thing that we recorded.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be much. It's just, but it like, I think it also shows people that you care about them understanding how your product works. And I
Yeah.
think it shows people that you are not just invested in their becoming a customer, you are like invested in their long-term success. And so I think when you share that type of content on social and people feel that you are invested in their long-term success by making these types of videos, it does really well. Like I'm not saying, oh, don't ever do promotional videos or anything like that. That would be insane. I'm just saying like, I think sometimes people don't, they have a really good asset that's like 80% of the way there. And if they just put a little more into it, clip it, edit it, add bumpers, add sound, you'd be getting a ton of value out of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I sense some angst among content marketers that many of them are sitting on a lot of video that they don't really know what to do with. For example, they host webinars, they record a podcast like this one, which generates, a 45-minute video every time they record, among whatever other just kind of like raw video assets they have. And there's the angst part comes in when they feel like, oh gosh, we should do something else with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Because it's pretty easy to say, like, here's a checklist. You chop it up. You do one LinkedIn one. You put 2 on Instagram. I feel like it's too formulaic though, and I feel like the angsty part comes from one. It's like repurposing, this sort of idea that like repurposing is sometimes better than net new, but like how do you execute it? And then 2, like there's I think some hesitation or fear around the relying too much on the algorithms. It's like, in order to do it well, you have to like really understand the channels where you're distributing it. And then I'm getting lost in this thought just thinking about it. And I think that's probably where other people get lost in it too.
Yeah, it's like, I think content marketers like strangely just believe that there's going to be some flawless system that they can follow and then that will be the result and everything will be great for them. I think it's rarely going to end up working out like that. I think a lot of it is you have to do what makes sense and you have the resources for within your own business. So in terms of like chopping up and editing content and what do you do with this sort of a lot of this stuff, the State of Video report for me was really, really interesting because you see it's something like a little over 50% of companies do a webinar like at least once a month. With some, I think it's like 6% do them, like weekly. Other people are doing them like, or no, actually it's even higher than that. There's like a 20% that do weekly. I'd have to double check the numbers. But it's, like 30% do monthly, 20% do weekly, and then some are doing even more frequently than that. And I was like, okay, that's a lot. Like 4 60-minute things a month. Like that's a huge chunk of webinar content. Plus you're doing applied podcast, plus you're making these other videos. And every social algorithm is generally favoring video. Like even X CEO recently came out and said that they want X to become like a video first platform. LinkedIn loves videos. YouTube's like the biggest search engine. So it's like a lot of these things are going to end up in the case where companies are already creating a ton of videos and they need to create more videos and they're struggling to house and organize them. It honestly feels a lot like blogs did like a few years ago. Like people don't really know how to organize a blog particularly well until you had like content pillar and structure strategies and all these other things. So it feels like we're in kind of early stages of video content getting to this point.
Yeah. I feel like there's a skill set component there too, where It's a bunch of writers and former journalists being like, "Oh, we should do something with this video," but like we don't know anything about video.
Yeah, and like I think like the thing that was like there's a couple things. So like the what to do with video, the thing that people are not, and this is something that is I'm like writing about actually pretty frequently, is like one, you could take your videos and put them into video galleries. Like it's a really underutilized kind of tactic. So like at Wistia, we have an ability to do like video galleries so it looks like Netflix. You create a page, it has videos, it has channels, it has episodes. Like it's very easy to make it look nice. And that has kind of two benefits. One benefit is usability and grouping. Like a lot of Wistia customers will create a series of demo videos so that they can then send that series to somebody and it'll be like, oh, this is how you use this part of our platform. This is how you use this part of our platform, stuff like that. We have series that are onboarding series for Wistia, just internal video things. Oh, you're a new employee of Wistia. Here's a video about benefits. Here's a video about, office policy. Here's a video about this. Like grouping that together is a nice usability experience, which is huge. The second benefit is basically video SEO. The way videos work today, Google made a change last year where it wants to see a video be the focus of the page that it's on. And so by grouping a lot of videos into channels, each individual video gets its own page. And so therefore it's helping that video to rank better in search. So like that's a kind of easy win-win situation for people.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have
Superpass should
videos,
do that.
group them together, and if you can, it's beneficial for users and it's beneficial for the algorithms. And then like you had mentioned before about, you get a lot of value out of using lead gen forms. Similar thing, like you can use these channels to group together so that then each video has a lead gen form associated with it. And then you could start taking actions based on what happens in that form. Send a follow-up email, convert that person to a hot lead, do whatever you want from that point on. So I think that's like a lot of the sides of grouping it. The question you had about, or the statement you had about clipping, I think is super interesting because I see all this stuff with like Midjourney and Sora, and it's like you type in a text prompt and then you get like a dolphin riding a bicycle, or like like a
Right.
panda bear on Mars, and people are like, this is gonna destroy Hollywood, and I was like, oh my god. And then in the State of Video report, we asked people, like, what are you most excited about using? And everybody was like AI. Like AI was like by far the most excited technology. And then you dig into those responses of what are people going to use it for? And it's like captions,
Oh my God.
transcripts,
Yeah, yeah. That's so funny.
like clipping, chaptering. You know what I mean? It's not like people are really just looking to save time. Like they're just looking on things like, how do I script something basically? Like how do I do a script quicker? How do I do post production a little bit quicker? How do I do, make a clip out of this video a little bit quicker? And so it's like when you see it, the larger kind of debates around AI and the use of AI and all that other stuff, I'm very happy with the stance that Wistia is taking, which is very much seems to be in line with what people actually want, which is AI for time savings. Like
Yeah,
AI
yeah.
to make you move forward in a way that you might not have moved forward before. Like I really look at like clipping a 60-minute webinar is one where all of a sudden it's like, I don't think people fully understand, at least like senior level people just tend to not get that process because they're like, yeah, just get together a couple clips of this webinar. Well, they're like, that means that the video producer then needs to watch the 16-minute webinar. Like, so they need to take an hour and then they need to mark down throughout the timestamps on all the clips that they might want to clip. Then they need to like actually clip all of those clips, and then they need to like resize appropriately. So like it's not unreasonable that to get a couple clips from a 60-minute webinar might take like 3+ hours.
Yeah, it's a huge pain. I do it for this podcast, and it's a
Yeah,
huge pain.
it's a huge pain. But like now, AI, you put it in, generates a transcript. You say, show me some highlights. It's like, here are 6 to 7 highlights. You look at the ones you like. You're like, oh, this would be good if it was a little longer, a little shorter, whatever. Make your adjustments, and it's done in like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
And
that's
so it's
amazing.
like that's what I'm excited about a lot of the AI stuff is like, oh, this is dope. It's just making video production easier for people. And it's less geared towards the people who are like a really skilled video producer and more people who are like, ah, shit, I just need to cut a couple clips of this thing.
Yeah, that's true. I've been using the Riverside Magic Clips feature for this podcast, and it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good. And then there's this whole other suite of tools. I was going to say they're new. I don't think they're all new, but I'm thinking of like Kapwing, Capsule, Animoto, like tools that are built for the non-professional, sort of like the Canva style apps for people who want to do video stuff but aren't a full-fledged editor or producer, which
Yeah,
is
and I mean,
cool.
like I'll tell you one that like came in and has like shifted my whole thinking about our content, which probably isn't good that I'm shifted this easily on a single message. But like I think it was 2 weeks ago, our support channel got a message from a 72-year-old woman, and she was like, I just wanted to reach out to say, like, I love Wistia. I was trying to send this video of my cat to my friends, but the file was too large, and I found your site. And I was like, oh, like, this is great. And she was like, it was easier for me to, like, send this video than it was to write this. And then she said something where she was like, and then I got this video from a nice man, like I think it's Chris Levine in an automated email, about
Yeah.
how to do my lighting setup better. And she was like, now I'm inspired to like start a podcast and like get going and stuff like
How
that. And I
great is
was like,
that?
yes, that's fucking awesome. Like she's like, this woman was like trying to do something simple, but because we made something daunting, like video slightly easier, it was like, yeah, I could get into this. And
That's
I feel
so
like
great.
for like if we can handle that for somebody who's just trying to send a video file of a cat who's like a 72-year-old woman, like we could be inspiring other marketers to like make the jump into this. Like it's not as hard as you think it is. It's very
Yeah,
doable, and like you can do a good job of this. So I
totally.
think that's like where my head is. If you ask me like what is my content strategy, it is like that is a dream state. Somebody comes in to do something, they learn something helpful, they get better at what they're doing, and they're like inspired to do more. Like that's my ideal flow.
That's so cool. You know, actually, that reminds me of a question I wanted to ask you about, which is how does Wistia think about its own content output in terms of the mix of text versus video? I know
Mm-hmm.
it's probably hard to compare like words published versus videos published, or maybe it's just like how much energy goes into text content versus video content. And I'm assuming that Wistia creates probably a lot more video content than the average company, although maybe that's not true.
No, we create a lot of video content. We do create a lot of video content, and I think we also just we eat our own dog food. People are sending videos all the time to each other. We're using lots of video content. We're really going big on a lot of video content, and we have a lot of things physically that make it easier. Studios, stuff like that. In terms
Yeah.
of the energy, there's like my content team is 3 people. Our video team is just 2 people. Like we have, so we're definitely invested heavily into both. I'd say we try and think about them really together. Like you'll notice a lot of the content on Wistia's blog has a video and a text component. And I think a lot of the times the way that I think about it is like we want to be meshing those two together where we can. Sometimes video is just not always necessary. You can get something across like a video marketing glossary. We don't really need that would be a weird video. Like just
Right.
somebody saying a bunch of definitions and things like that. And so like for me, when I think about it, we try and balance our content where we want to be able to create a bunch of useful content that's searchable, SEO, stuff like that, could be used in email and drip campaigns. But I don't feel like I necessarily think about them as hugely different. I think about them as driving towards the same goal as helping people. Like one of the ways that I think at a high level we look at it, it's a driving force of our content strategy, is this document we have called the core questions doc. And the core questions doc is basically like 200 to 230 questions that we feel like Wistia should answer better than anyone else. Like
Oh, this is interesting. Is this document publicly available or is this internal stuff?
this is an internal thing. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
it's not unreasonable that we would make it a public document, but basically, like the way it looks is like, here are questions about production. And there are things that we feel like we should have a better answer because we have an opinion on it, like a good opinion, a good, strong opinion about why this is useful, or that it is like directly tied to our product, or that it's a question
Right.
that's like very core. So you'll see things like, what is aperture? What is frame rate? What is aspect ratio? Like these are all important things for somebody producing video, which lines up to our customers. How do you do video follow up on lead forms or like video lead form follow up? That's another question we should answer. How do you look at video analytics? What's more important, play rate or watch time? And so, like, those are questions that we feel like our audience would have where we are uniquely positioned to answer them well. And so, like, a lot of what that guiding principle is saying, like, do we have an answer to those questions? And often it's like, is that answer good, okay, or do we need to update this particular article? And also, like, do we have a video associated with a high priority question? Like, if it's a
Yeah.
high priority question that makes sense to answer with a video, do we have videos associated with it? So I think the core questions doc is a really big driving force for me in terms of like, what are we making and what are we trying to do? And it's we're trying to answer the questions that people have related to video and related to like video production.
I love that. And I especially love that because I feel like you've taken a version of what a lot of companies have, which is a keyword list, but made it very personal,
Yeah.
right? Because the keyword list often falls flat over time because there isn't a perspective or any conviction over what goes into that content. Whereas what you're saying is, we believe we should be the authority. So like let's do that. That's a totally different way to, maybe you even end up in a similar place later on where you're optimizing the thing for search or whatever. But it's coming from a place of authority, opinion, etc. That so much SEO content just doesn't.
We don't want, yeah, because like it's not like that is a part of the doc. There's another sheet that's several columns over that shows like, here are the associated keywords with this question, and here are basically the volume of search you could get from that, right? And here, like, so we keep that information there, but that is not the point. The point is, are we answering core questions? So it's like the CSM team, our customer success team, looks at this document. Oh, great. They get a question from a customer. They look at it as a core question. Does that core question line up? Here's the appropriate
Yeah.
resource. Great. Sales team, you get a question, you could go to this thing. Like, it's a very clear cut document in that way. But it is something, and it also gives us a roadmap. There's a lot of questions we don't have answers to. Like we haven't written it yet, but we feel like this is the direction we want to go in.
Yeah, I love that. You've mentioned the state of video report a couple times, and I wanted to ask you about that. And there's so many angles we could talk about. Like, I'm curious about the meta of it, like the research. How did you write it? Who worked on it? The promotion, et cetera. And then there's also like the findings of it, which are equally relevant to content marketers.
Yeah.
But maybe there's one thing I'm particularly interested in, which is it obviously required coordination among many people to do, but it still retains this kind of branding or kind of brand ethos maybe that is so familiar to Wistia. How do you maintain that as you add people and tasks and project management and all these things into it? Like it could so quickly become a piece of content that is so obviously created by a committee that you lose all that good branding stuff that Wistia has sort of become known for.
Yeah. And I think like the whole issue of like marketing by committee versus collaborating on something is really tough. And I'll say like a couple of things about this topic. Like, for one, The State of Video report, how does it work? We collect a ton of research from our own platform. And so basically, like, we look at millions of videos that are embedded within Wistia. We took the transcripts of millions of videos and ran them through AI to categorize them. We
Cool.
cross-referenced all those videos with industry to understand what industries, like the benchmarks for each one, and then like did a bunch of analysis of like durations of videos for different industries, for different types, for different benchmarks, and all of these different pieces of it. So that's kind of the process of how it works. It's generally like a couple months of information gathering, a little short while of putting all of that together, working on the report, the design. That's like a few weeks. And then the webinar, we turned that around in like 2.5 weeks or 2.5, 3 weeks or so. And that is like our most recent one is like it's insane. It's a live show. It was like
It's really
fully
good. I watched some of it
pre-recorded.
today.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's bizarre. It's like very fun. It was super good to do. That's like a whole other topic I could separate. But like the question of like how does something maintain really good Wistia quality or is that consistent quality and not get into a whole committee of opinions? So I think when situations go bad and you're doing marketing by committee, it can often feel like you're doing collaboration where somebody says something pretty innocuous, like, oh, you should get so-and-so's opinion on it, right? Get their opinion, get their take on it. Get so-and-so's opinion, get their take on it, right? Like some sort of things like that. And once you start adding in all of these people, if there's not a clear owner or somebody who's like the person who's making the final call about these things, all of a sudden it becomes a committee decision. And I think one of the strong parts of Wistia's culture that helps a lot with this is people are given a lot of autonomy and they're given a lot of control and they have people supporting, watching, and making sure that it's going in a good direction. But like, there is a confidence in the people here that they know what they're doing and they were hired to do that. And so like we got an enormous amount of compliments on the design of the State of Video. Like it's beautifully designed. It looks fantastic. And it was done by like one of Wistia's junior designers. And it just looks
Oh,
great.
wow.
But like they
Yeah,
had the
that's cool.
freedom, they nailed it. It looks fucking great. And we were all there. And it's like when I looked at the design, I knew what I was looking for. Do the charts accurately reflect the information that's being said? I'm not really there to give design feedback. I could say it and I could do it, but she doesn't have to listen to me. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
I can be like, I don't really like that color. It doesn't matter if I really like it. She's the one designing the report. You know, like I don't really like this piece of it. Doesn't matter. And I think like that part of it is really useful. And then also having a culture where you can quickly arrive at decisions. So I'll give you one that I think is funny about the webinar. Live show. It's a live show. There's this segment during the live show where it's Chris Levine is at the data desk and he's at the data desk and the data desk is like, you know, it's got all these computers and all this other stuff on it. When we were shooting that particular part, it's like that segment beforehand, there's this enormous calculator. And then also Chris Levine has this enormous pencil, right? And all of a sudden we're in this room and it's like, the head of marketing, you know, director of content creative is there. I'm there. Chris is there. And it's like, head of marketing is like, get rid of the pencil, get rid of the calculator. I hate these. Like, we need to keep this well. And then Chris is like, the calculator is absolutely non-negotiable. I'm keeping the gigantic calculator. And it's like, I want the giant pencil. And then Dan comes back again. He's like, no, like the further this gets from reality, the worse it doesn't hit as well as a skit. It's like, okay, fine. I'll remove the pencil, but I'm keeping the calculator. This is like 4:30 at the end of the day. You know, this is like people have been shooting videos for hours and this is the argument, but it's like quick decision. Everybody's opinion is heard and then a decision is made. And I think like the more often you build a culture of that with content creators, the better. You get more consistency when people know I'm going to say my feedback. I'm not going to couch it in something. I know who's making the final decision on this, and then we can move forward. You're going to end up with consistent results. The thing that I think is hard for leadership sometimes, or people in more senior positions who end up marketing by committee, is like, I think there's a certain sense of like a little bit of ego that they feel like if they don't say something, or if they say something and their like opinions aren't taken into account, maybe they're not that good at their job. Or
Yeah,
like, I don't know
absolutely.
why people have an issue with it, but like sometimes I think people are afraid of relinquishing creative control. And by doing that, they're not guiding the project. They're just like holding it back. And so I think like the more people can get into the habit of being like, I trust the person I hired to do this, go do it. And if anything's drastically wrong, I will call it out in very direct terms and get it out to people. And so, like, I think you see that a lot of the state of video. It's very consistent. It's very easy. It's very good to understand because you have not that many people working on it. And the people who are working on it have a high degree of autonomy on what they're doing.
Yeah, I love that. There's actually, I wrote an article for the Superpath blog a couple years ago about why iteration doesn't always make content better. Like there's this kind of trap that content teams fall into where it's like somebody writes a brief, someone else writes it, then they have a feedback thing and Google Docs comments, but then somebody else feels like they want to add their 2 cents, and then the writer feels like they need to respond. And it's like next thing you know, it's just been iterated on so many times, but like completely lost its spirit, for lack of a better term.
And
You
that's
know,
like, I don't know. I think that's a lot of people borrowing HubSpot's content model, where it's like, it really feels like people are really excited about this idea where it's like you have an SEO guy who plans like the SEO and then writes a brief, and then you send that brief to a writer, and then that writer like looks at it, and then there's an editor, and the editor edits it, and then all of a sudden it goes back to the writer to write, and then it has to go back to the SEO guy to make sure that it didn't like lose any of those other things, and then it goes back to the person who then actually uploads it onto the website, and then that like it ends
it's
up
like an
being
assembly line,
it's
basically.
this
Yeah.
huge assembly line. And I think that works really, really, really well when your content team is large. Like and when everybody needed specialized knowledge, like when SEO wasn't particularly accessible to the average person, sure, it like was, you needed all of those individual things. I think when you look at stuff now, it's better when everybody is a little bit more autonomous, knows everything that they're doing and knows a little bit there, and you're more like supporting each other in specific areas. And I think that model works better because people are faster when you have these like kind of clear areas of overlap. Like I do this thing, you do this thing, we overlap on this other particular area. I write customer testimonial content, you write like thought leadership content. Sometime we come together and help each other and support each other's work on like product content that's thought leadershipy. Great. Like totally
Yeah.
good. I think the thing that about the assembly line that is like a little bit further out that I think people are going to run into is I think a lot of marketing leaders are paying influencers money. So they're paying influencers like $10,000 for a couple posts. And I think what a lot of marketing leaders are probably looking at on their content teams or thinking about subconsciously is like, that's one dude, like, or one woman, and I'm paying one woman, and she's making all of this incredible content that's great. And then I have a team of 6 people who are struggling to get a blog post out in a week. And it's very confusing to have that dichotomy. Why am I paying 6 people to go slow and make something that's not working? And then I'm very excited to pay this influencer $10,000 who is by themselves writing a weekly column. And I think that difference is going to keep getting exacerbated where businesses are going to be like, oh, maybe I don't need all of these people in this assembly line format. Maybe I need to be encouraging more people to think, work, and act like creators, where they're taking on more ownership of the entire process. They're thinking about how does it do well in ranking? How will it end up on social? Like, how is it going to be cut into a different video? How is it going to, is there other videos to add it to? Like, the more people are actually thinking in that way, I think the better production you're going to end up getting.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. Back in my animals days, we had this cool luxury of being able to see a lot of people's Google Analytics. And I don't have great data on this, but anecdotally, I remember being very disappointed looking at traffic from large companies with large content teams. You're like, how are you spending this much money and nothing's growing? And then every now and then you'd find kind of like a lone wolf content marketer just all by themselves, just absolutely crushing it. It's like, why? How does this happen? I mean, what you just explained is exactly why it happens. But I wonder, I have this theory right now that in content marketing, everything that was old is new again. Like a lot of people are just like throwing stuff out the window right now. And I wonder if there will be kind of like a new breed of these like lone wolf type content marketers who just can absolutely crush it for companies, who maybe previously relied on the 5 to 10 person content team that costs at this point maybe a prohibitive amount to continue running.
I think you're going to see the phrase that I hear is like that I think will probably come over to content is from engineering. People, I've heard of 10x engineers. Like an engineer or a developer who is so much better or so good that their code is like so much more impactful than a larger amount of other people. I think you're going to see something similar where it's like, oh, wow, like Amanda from Spark Toro. Like she was on it. I didn't realize I was listening to that podcast. They're a 3-person team. I was like, what?
Yeah. She is incredibly effective.
Yeah, exactly. Like more people are going to stop looking at it as like, I need a writer or I need this person. And they're going to find people who are like, oh, wow, that person can write an article, appear in a video, and then post it on social and write copy for this. They're amazing. And they would have cost me 5 people that would have been all in arguments with each other. Like one person with no arguments who's good at working is going to really outpace everybody else. So I think like that's something that I'm very like strong on is like, oh yeah, like there's probably going to be a lot of that kind of like 10x language for content marketers, people who are like disproportionately above the rest of content marketing.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. Sam, I want to be respectful of your time. I feel like we're kind of just scratching the surface here. Like there's a lot to talk about. I really like your perspective and your opinions on content. And I feel like you're just saying so many things that I've been kind of like mulling over in my head. You're giving so many of these things like language. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. We should do a round 2 if you're open to it. But in the meantime, where can we send people? Like where can people follow along with your work and Wistia stuff too?
Yeah. So people should follow Wistia. Just follow Wistia on LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, wherever it is. You'll see a lot of our great content there. I encourage everybody to download the State of Video report. So just look for Wistia State of Video. It's really fantastic. Check out the State of Video live. And then if you want to follow me or anywhere where I am, usually LinkedIn is the best place. My name is just Sam Balter. You can follow me there.
Perfect. We'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes so people can easily get to it. Sam, thanks so much. It's awesome to meet you. And I really do hope we can do this again.
Awesome. No, it was great to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.